Hello, Mestorians. We love the history, we love the mess, and we love the Gilded Age, and it is time to get to part 2 of this review. For Season 2, Episode 3, Head to Head. We've already talked about what happened in the Russell's household. If you haven't seen that recap and review, go on and check that one out also. But now we're going to talk about what's going on with the Van Rhijns. So at the Van Rhijns, Mrs. Astor has decided that this opera battle is getting way too hot. It's time to call in the troops, so she organizes everybody to meet over at Agnes's house. And she doesn't appreciate what Bertha's doing because, after all, didn't I make her who she is today? Oh my gosh, Mrs. Astor, I hate when people talk like that. Well, if you made Bertha Russell, then you make another one because Bertha is not going to be under your rule like your flunky, Ward McAllister. But Agnes is ready. She wants to know what can be done. What does she need to do? She hasn't been more fired up about something since the Civil War. So she's going to go on a letter writing campaign because that's what Mrs. Astor told her to do. You got that, Peggy? Peggy darn sure has that. She is enjoying listening to all of this upstairs gossip and probably thinks that these ladies are crazy, looking at their quote-unquote problems compared to what she's dealing with in her own personal life. But Agnes said that of course Bertha's going to go against Mrs. Astor because that class doesn't have any gratitude. And I just want to know what it is exactly that Bertha needs to have all of this gratitude for, especially from Mrs. Astor. But then, of course, where the academy is concerned, she can't get a box. She's got money. She wants to take her money to where she can get the bang for her buck. That's what the other wealthy people want to do, and they don't owe anything to anyone. So Agnes is assigned with the task of writing letters to the current box holders to let them know that if they dare try to get another box at the new opera house, then they are going to lose their box at the academy. She's ready to do that, meaning Peggy's going to be ready to do that. 100% chance Peggy's going to be writing all of those letters. Aurora Fane is at the meeting as well, but she can't take it anymore. Now remember, in the first episode, she let Bertha know that if it comes down to a battle between you two, I'm going to have Mrs. Astor's back. But she doesn't like the tone of the conversation that's going on there, so she gets up and she's like, I'm gonna go before you start handing out weapons. Mrs. Astor says, if only it were that easy. So these ladies, they are serious, they are ready, they are prepared for battle. Ada and Marion are there, they're going to do their part. But they both feel like, well, New York City is big enough for 2 opera houses, isn't it? That is not the way that Mrs. Astor sees it, nor Agnes. They want to maintain their social standing at the first original opera house. But Ada's got other things on her mind. She wants to party. Ada is a party girl now. She's ready for a hot girl fall. She wants to start entertaining. And guess who she wants to entertain? Rector Luke. She wants to invite that man over for a luncheon. And I just caught something. Did you all pay attention this episode when she goes to drop off the clothes for charity at the church? That's the extra sewing that Armstrong had to do in the previous episode. So Ada is just dreaming up reasons, coming up with reasons to go and put herself in the presence of Rector Luke. And I like it. She wants to entertain Rector Luke, and she does. She gets to have her luncheon. They have Aurora Fane and her husband over. Marion's new love interest, Dashiell, is there. People we would expect at the table, but what we don't expect at the table is this soup, apparently. Agnes, we know, is not big on change, and apparently hot soup was not something that was commonly served at luncheon. I think that we got schooled on that in the first season, when it came time for Bertha to host Ward McAllister for luncheon. But anyway, Ada is letting the rector know that she's listening to him because he let them know after Easter service that it had been really hard for him to find some down-home clam chowder, and well, he's got some at this luncheon. And everyone thinks that it's so sweet that Ada would do that for him. Now, I understand that that's just how everything worked, but it seems like that would be the time to call Mrs. Bauer from the kitchen so that everyone can compliment the chef and give her a nice round of applause. But like ladies, wouldn't it be so nice to have a staff? And when you put on an extravagant dinner, you get all the credit just because you told your chef, I want you to make this, that, and the third. And then it comes out great and everyone gives you the credit. Oh my gosh, you went through such trouble. So anyway, the clam chowder is a hit. Cousin Dashiell brings up the fact that his daughter just thinks that Marion is the best teacher on the face of the earth. She doesn't want to pay attention to anyone else. And we learn that, well, we already know, but Rector Luke learns that Marion teaches watercolors and he expresses his appreciation for watercolors. They take a back seat to the fancy oil paintings, but he loves them. And guess what? Ada does too. And Agnes isn't buying it. Oh, really? You love watercolors, do you? Well, tell us, who is your favorite watercolorist? Oh, sister, you want to know who my favorite watercolorist is? It's, what's the name? Oh, yeah, it's Yo Mama, okay? That's who my favorite watercolorist is. No, actually, she says some person's name who I don't remember and I didn't take it in the notes. So apparently this was a real artist, but Rector Luke knows all about him, and he invites her to meet up with him to go to a showing of this particular watercolorist's work. And he does that when she goes to drop off all of those clothes that Armstrong had to work overtime to sew. I'm guessing that the Rector Luke is probably approaching 60 years old, and this is his first time asking out a woman, so it's not the most romantic proposal. Hey, there's a showing of his work down on 42nd Street. I'm going to be there at 4 o'clock. Why don't you meet me there? I suppose that Ada has had about just as much experience at accepting dates, and she's saying she wants to be there. She doesn't know how she's going to do it. She does a little scheming with Marion, who says that she'll walk her there, and I'll just drop you off, so to speak. I'll take a walk while you're having your date. And it's cute, and I sense some sexual chemistry. Is it okay for me to say that when I'm talking about an Episcopalian rector? Now, downstairs at the Van Ryn household, we've got Peggy getting ready to take a trip to Alabama with T. Thomas Fortune. The Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute in Alabama has just gotten some money for a new dormitory thanks to a white benefactor from Brooklyn, and his paper's going to go down there to cover the story. Peggy wants to go. She's begging him to go. She keeps putting in a good word for herself, and finally, he presents her with a train ticket, lets her know we're going Monday, pack lightly, because it's humid in Alabama. I am really curious to see what her wardrobe is going to be, if we're going to see a very different look in her wardrobe, because back then all of the clothes just looked so heavy and cumbersome. I wonder if we're going to see something that's more like the Newport wardrobe when Peggy goes down there, but that's going to be interesting. And this is where we see just how sheltered Peggy is. At this point, it's 1883 in our story. We're not even 20 years removed from the abolishment of slavery, but that is a life that Peggy has never known. Thomas Fortune lets Peggy know that he was born a slave and he hasn't been down south since he was a slave, since he's been free. And Peggy says, oh, I understand. And he tells her, no, you don't. And it's really clear that even though it hasn't been that long ago, that Peggy lives a life that is completely different from most black people in her time. But clearly, her mother knows something differently. Her mother seems like she's scared out of her mind once she learns that Peggy's going to go down south to Alabama. She gives her some very strict instructions, and she's trying to help Peggy stay alive. Peggy doesn't understand that once she crosses the Mason-Dixon line, it's going to be a completely different atmosphere. And her mom, Miss Dorothy, almost has to shock the information into Peggy because it's clear that she's not picking up on it. Peggy's attitude about going down south almost seems the way that we would look at it today in 2023. She just has no clue of what could be waiting for her down there. And it reminds me of a scene back in season 1 when she is having a meal with her parents and her father starts joking about how one of his relatives, I believe one of his uncles, used to always put eggs in the jelly and how it would destroy their breakfast or their luncheon. And he laughs about this person, and her mother asks, well, what happened to him? And he says, oh, he got sold off. So for him, slavery is not some distant memory, but for Peggy, it's something that she has never known. She doesn't know a world where black people are treated cruelly, where black people are lynched. So her mother is just trying to shock into her that you need to be prepared for a change of pace. And we know that Peggy is still grieving over the loss of her son. So it seems like part of what she's trying to do is just to lose herself in her work so that she won't think about her son all the time. And Peggy's mom is just trying to impart some wisdom on Peggy so that her own child will come back and that she won't be in Peggy's position, grieving the loss of a child. Peggy has led a very sheltered and privileged upbringing, and it is nice to see that on a show like this. We'll see if Armstrong ever comes around. We do remember, though, in this episode, because Peggy is tasked with writing those letters that Agnes is supposed to write, Bannister lets the downstairs staff know that, yeah, Peggy's going to be writing the box holders, and Armstrong says, what? She can't be writing people like that. She can't write that sort of people. Oh, Armstrong, get over it. Do what you got to do to keep your job. And Larry, things are heating up with his old lady in Newport. What's going to happen there? That was pretty much it for this episode. Like I said, again, if you want to know everything that happened in the Russell household, then check out the other video that we did about season 2, episode 3. And let me know your predictions for episode 4 and the rest of the season. I'm looking at all of your comments so that we can put another predictions video together ahead of episode 4 airing. And I'll try to get another fashion video done as well. And I also got the reviews from Oscar Wilde's play so that we can read those bad reviews. The play was horrible, apparently, and I want to show you all just how horribly it was received in the New York papers in 1883. But that's it for this video. Do not forget, if you want to know about the real life people who were in this show, real life characters, then check out my videos on T. Thomas Fortune, Ward McAllister, Stanford White, and Sylvia Chamberlain. And hey, one more thing that I forgot about. I remembered after I had already edited this audio, so if this sounds differently, please forgive me, this is why. I forgot to talk about Watson. What do you think about Watson? His son-in-law has offered him, I guess, a really great offer if he doesn't ever want to see his daughter or grandchildren ever again. He wants to send him away to San Francisco with a place to live, a bank account, and a servant or two. What do you think about that? I do think that it's terribly cruel, but under the circumstances, it's cruel, but it does set him up for life. What do you think he's going to do? Is he going to take that offer, or is he going to stay in New York City? Let me know. This video has been brought to you by me. Well, my Patreon is a sponsor for this video. If you like these dirty scandals on my channel, then you'll love my Patreon, Ty's Too Hot Mess History. It has all of the stuff that I can't talk about or show here because it's just too hot, too violent, too sexual, too graphic, too much. Come and join us there for the hot mess history. The link is in the description box.